Guys, my name is Raphael, and in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down 5 tips on how to make your language learning experience much more effective. Guys, I've been studying Spanish for multiple reasons. I was studying Japanese at first, but there's not a lot of Japanese speakers around me. And I was like, well, what's probably the most functional thing I can learn? Because I want to become a polyglot one day. I want to be able to speak a ton of languages. I think it's good for your brain. I think it's good for learning other things. And that language is Spanish. That's also the language of my ethnic background. I'm 100% Puerto Rican. All my grandparents are from Puerto Rico. My parents are from New York. They're New York Ricans. My sister's a Spanish teacher. And I was like, man, like this is probably the easiest language I can learn. If I can learn Spanish, I can learn systems on how to learn other languages as well. The next language I want to learn is Portuguese because I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I also want to go into learning Chinese, Japanese, Russian, and probably some other languages in the future. But if I can learn those 5 like in my lifetime, I'd probably be super proud of myself. And to have the ability to speak to somebody from a different country or who doesn't know English and you can speak their language, they're going to be much more comfortable around you. They're going to trust you. It's going to be good for business, good for building friendships. Like it's such a great idea. And I wish that more people were, bilingual or polyglots, because I feel like the world might be a better place if more people learn different languages, or it could be worse. I don't know, but hopefully it would be a better place if more people were fluent in different languages. All right, without further ado, here are the 5 tips that I'm going to give you, which is going to make your language learning much better. And my first tip, and this is not ranked in order, the best tip is number 4, so you guys got to stick around. The first tip I say was get an application like Duolingo. Now, can you learn a language effectively on Duolingo? I'd say yeah, but it would take you such a long period of time. Like you're definitely not doing it within a year. Even if you complete the entire lesson within a year, which is probably not the most effective use of your time, you're definitely going to learn a lot of language, and you definitely be able to go to a different country and get around. Like you're definitely going to be listening to a lot. But with Duolingo, what it provides is vocabulary, which is awesome. So you're going to learn a ton of words that are going to be in your system. You're going to learn grammar, so you're going to learn how to use that vocabulary much more efficiently. And it's also going to provide a little bit, not a ton, of listening practice, which is probably one of the most important things to language learning, is a lot of input, listening to the language. What I like about Duolingo is that it separates everything into categories. So you're gonna learn, there's gonna be one section where you might be spending, depending on how fast you do the lessons, is gonna be about school, learning hey, I have homework, it's very hard to do. Yo tengo tarea y la tarea es muy difícil. So I just said I have homework and it is very hard. Learning sections is like having a system. If I go to school a lot and I'm like, hey, like this is related to what I'm doing right now, I'm going to be able to learn that much more efficiently because it's something that it's more relatable. Or let's say that you're a soccer player and I learn a lot about soccer, deportes, football, pelota, ganar, jugador. I'm learning all these words that relate to something I have an interest in. The thing with language learning is that you don't want to have a high level of stress. You want to have a low level of stress. And if you're learning about things that you enjoy, it's going to be much more efficient to learn that language. So something like Duolingo, obviously you don't want to just learn about things that you enjoy. You need to step out of that realm, but it puts things into categories: school, food, parking, travel, saying your name and whatnot. So that's what I like about Duolingo. The category, the sections are awesome. They have great listening practice, great grammar introduction, and great vocabulary introduction. And one of the things I like too is that it keeps track of how many days you've been studying language in a row, because consistency is key. Tip number 2, and this is just something that I've learned for myself, is that learn the language at the same time every day. First thing I do in the morning, I wake up, I have my cup of coffee, I take a shower, I eat a banana. I don't like to have a big breakfast, but right after I'm done with all those things where I feel refreshed, my mind is going, I'm like, you know what? I don't have a lot of stress going on in the day right now. Why don't I just study for 30 minutes? I go on my Duolingo, I'm learning the new vocabulary, I'm learning some grammar structures, I'm learning a ton of new things, and maybe I'm not learning some new stuff, maybe I'm reiterating, because repetition is super important. It's like when you go to the gym, you want to bench 300 pounds, well, you're gonna have to do a lot of 155, right? So you're slowly working yourself up, and every time you go on the bench, you remember how to bench 155, because that's gonna be easy. But once you get to 300, you're gonna need a little bit more work. So the progression is awesome. So staying at the same time every day is super effective. I like doing it first thing in the morning, like I said, because there's no stress. My mind is powered. If I wait till nighttime sometime, I might be tired throughout the day. Something might have happened where it puts me in a bad mood. And that means every morning I'm going to be ready. I'm like, all right, first thing I'm doing is studying Duolingo. Number 3 is using ChatGPT as a private tutor. Now, ChatGPT can't replace a private tutor. In some senses, it definitely can, right? Like I can ask it questions whenever I want. I don't have to schedule it, but having a private tutor is also awesome. I probably would prefer a private tutor from a different country, like a Spanish-speaking country, so that, or, you know, someone who's lived in Spanish-speaking country for long, so I can understand the culture, because I think understanding the culture is just as important as understanding the language, because sometimes cultures also have different words. Like in Puerto Rican Spanish, habichuelas is beans, but in like Spain Spanish, frijoles is beans. So different cultures use different words. So I'd probably prefer someone from Spain, just because I feel like that's like the general version of Spanish where probably a lot of other people are going to understand. But using ChatGPT is awesome. I use ChatGPT voice. I use ChatGPT when I'm watching videos in Spanish. I put the word in, I'm like, hey, can you break this down? It'll use the word in a sentence. It'll give me different conjugations of the word, and it just shows me how to use that word much more efficiently. And then also voice practice too. I think with ChatGPT, when I first started studying Spanish, I probably didn't have as much input. I wasn't listening to it as much, but I was practicing speaking out loud. And even though I was saying things wrong, like I didn't care how my grammar was. Like to learn a language, the most important thing is to understand the language before you can speak it effectively. Because if I'm just like trying to speak, to understand the language is more important. So I want to learn this language first, like by listening to it. And then if I speak, I might not have confidence to speak out loud. But using ChatGPT is not telling you like, oh, you suck at Spanish. Like that was probably something I dealt with like as a child. Like, oh, you don't know Spanish? Like how, like people would make fun of you. I'm like, dude, like I just don't know it. So like it kind of gave me that negative feedback, and I'm sure that was probably one of the reasons why I didn't want to learn the language. But using like ChatGPT is always going to encourage you, like, oh man, you're learning great. And like, not that I'm necessarily looking for that, but I know there's not going to be any negative feedback, so that's going to keep motivating me to learn the Spanish. So even if I say things wrong, I still have the confidence because I've always practiced speaking out loud, even if it was just an AI. But then eventually, if I speak to people in person, the correcting is not necessarily bad. Correcting you like a downplay, like, oh, you said that wrong. Like, oh, you said that wrong, but you should say this instead. Like, that's a positive feedback. You're like, all right, I said something wrong, but this person's helping me say the right thing. So I always try to stay around people who are going to give you that positive feedback, even though you're making a mistake. Watching Spanish with Spanish subtitles. Now, this is probably the biggest tip that's helped me out in my Spanish learning journey. I listened to Steve Kaufman, who didn't really have videos of him speaking in Spanish, but he just gave you a lot of language learning tips, which is awesome. I just don't think it's good to get caught in the loop of watching him over and over again. Like, he gives some great tips, but like, hey, you got to eventually just practice learning how to speak this language. Like, you can't just keep watching someone who's giving you tips on it, right? And then the number one person that helped me out that doesn't have a great, she has a great YouTube channel, but she doesn't have a huge YouTube channel, is Andrea La Mexicana. I actually messaged her the other day on Instagram, and I was like, thanks so much for making these awesome videos. I believe she's from Mexico. She lives in Canada. She's a polyglot. I believe she knows Spanish, English, Portuguese, and I'm not sure what other languages she does know, but she has some Spanish lessons online, and there's a ton of videos. And what I liked about her videos the most is that this is my video style I like. I love watching people vlog and going to different places and doing different activities. So she has vlogs of her traveling around the city, going to the gym, cooking food, kayaking, hiking, visiting different countries, going to the airport. And if you remember when I said in Duolingo, everything's in sections. So even today, I was studying travel, and then she had a video, I forgot for how long ago, but it was her traveling from Mexico back to Canada, and she was talking about like how she had layovers, how many bags she needs. She was tired from waking up because she only got 5 hours of sleep. She's going throughout a day, and these things are so relatable to me. I'm like, this is some great content, and I'm learning so efficiently. And then sometimes she'll have her friends there. Her friends are her students, and they don't know the language perfectly, so she's speaking to them slowly. And she has different levels. She has a beginner level, she has an intermediate level. I'm not sure if she has an expert level, but she does some podcasts and whatnot. So listening to the language. Now, when I like listening to the vlog style, because I get to see what's happening. I get to kind of like, I could see like, oh, she's talking about an apple, which she has an apple in her hand, a pinata, there's a pinata in the hand. And I'm like, I'm seeing it, I'm listening to it, and I'm reading it, and I'm getting 3 different learning feedbacks in one. I don't like podcasts, even the ones that you can visually see, because they're not moving around unless they're giving you visuals. So for me, like, they're not as entertaining because they're sitting in one spot, and you can only listen, so you can only picture so much. So by having something, like, imagine being a baby. You're never going to listen to a podcast as a baby, but your parents are going to be taking you around. They're going to be saying certain things, and that's how babies pick up on languages. by seeing, listening, and if they had captions and they knew how to read, they would probably put on those real life captions. I'm sure in some time they're gonna have glasses with captions on them, and I'm sure that they're going to exist for babies apparently. Probably not for babies, but that would be funny. And my last tip, which is probably the most obvious, is staying consistent. Now imagine, I don't know if you what instruments you play, maybe play the violin, but imagine you didn't play the violin and you did the violin from age 5 till now. Let's say you're like 20 or 30. You did it 5 minutes a day, every day from when you were a kid till you're 30. You didn't even have to practice for an hour a day. You'd be so good at the violin, like you could probably play with your eyes closed, which probably isn't the hardest thing to do, or like you could probably even listen to music and be like, oh, I could probably play that, just give me a second. So consistency is key. 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day in 1 year is 24 hours. This, one of my workout mentors told me this. And it was because I was learning how to jump rope. And I was terrible at jumping rope. And I just did it 5 minutes every day. In a week, that's half an hour of you doing jump rope. And I'm sure nobody wants to jump rope. I mean, unless you love jumping rope. For 30 minutes in a workout. People are probably like, all right, I want to go do something else. They don't want to do, like, imagine doing a plank for 30 minutes. That would be terrible. If you did a plank for 30 seconds, like, you know, every day for a week, like you're gonna have some pretty strong core, like after that week, or stronger at least in the beginning, or it's gonna be easier. Now you did like a plank for a minute every day for a week. Next week, that shouldn't be as hard to do that plank. So by doing 5 minutes every day, you're gonna stay super consistent. That's why I love Duolingo. It has the chart of like how many days you're in a row. It has like a little fire streak. Right now I have a 30-day or 29-day perfect streak. That's just because first thing I do in the morning is just do my lesson. But let's say I'm super busy and I know I just can't get an hour of practicing Spanish in a day. I just do my Duolingo for 5 minutes. Obviously, it's not as great as doing it for an hour or 30 minutes or even 15. But if let's say I'm having a hard month and I decided to just study for 5 minutes every day, that's still, what is it called? How many minutes is that? That's still 150 minutes. That's still 2 hours and 30 minutes of practice time for that month. That's not necessarily such a bad thing, right? So stay consistent so that when you're ready to come back into doing those hardcore lessons or studying for an hour a day again, that it's gonna be much easier. Because if you go from nothing, you're probably gonna forget a lot. But if you're going from something, even though it's like a little bit, you're probably not gonna forget that much, and you probably even learned a little bit more. But my name is Rafael. I'm at an intermediate level in Spanish. I made my last video about Spanish in August, so about 6 or 7 months ago, and I'm super happy. I'm super proud of my Spanish progression. I can't wait to see what it looks like in another month from now. And also, I just quit basically all my jobs. I got like one private lesson I do a week, so it's not going to affect anything really. But pretty much because I quit all my jobs and focus on I have a brand called Elevate Jiu-Jitsu, I'm going to be able to make some more videos. Probably going to be making some jiu-jitsu videos, and I'm super passionate about language learning, so why not throw some language learning videos on the YouTube as well. Guys, if you want any videos on anything, please comment in the comments below, and I'll see you guys during my next one. Peace.